Here at the photo wall close to where the analysis was done. So it independently confirmed that this was done during the later period. So then we decided to extend it in other direction. This one in Kisaragatta, possibly from the Vishnukundan period. And we saw some wedge marks here too on the exposed stones. All this was slight inaccuracy in the title of the talk. I mean, when you talk about stoneworking, it's a whole gamut of things, like from sourcing the stone to processing it to the fine art of carving and finishing and all that. I will be talking only about part of the process. Like I will be talking about the extraction of stone mostly, about the quarrying of stone rather. This is a work which I began with Miss Meghana Kupa, who's also in the audience here right now. I'm very happy to see her there, and which I've been continuing ever since that for almost a decade now. And so, so we'll start with the Malaprava Valley, with the site where the well-known sites of Pattadakkal, Aihole and Badami and a whole series of smaller sites also are there. And because this is one of the earliest centers of monumental architecture in stone in southern India. So we would be talking about the quarries near Pattadakkal, and this is another view of the World Heritage Site, the monuments there at Pattadakkal. And also Aihole, you might be looking at one of the earliest structural stone temples in the Rawalafadi South temple that you see in Aihole. And of course, Badami, where you have early both rock cut as well as structural monuments and a series of early sculptures and all that. And also we will talk about another early nucleus of stone temple architecture, stone monumental architecture in southern India, which is under the Pallavas at Kanchi and Mamallapuram. Some of the earliest stone monuments which you can see are the 5 Rathas at Mahabalipuram. And of course, the sculptures like these were the descent of Ganges and the early attempts at that, also some of the unfinished ones. Of course, there's a lot you learn from unfinished monuments, and a big part of this talk will center around unfinished monuments. Like there are finished monuments like this with small unfinished parts in it, like this Mahishasuramardini cave at Mahabalipuram. And some unknown structures like this, which could have been the beginnings of a cistern, or these very famous the Pidari Amman Rathas, which are unfinished stone Rathas, which too many people do not visit while going to Mahabalipuram. And then we would also spend a lot of time looking at quarries where the stones are sourced from. So what you see here is one of the quarries near Pattadakkal. So the main group of temples is near where the river Malaprabha turns prominently towards the north. And about 5 kilometers north of this, in the sandstone hills that you see in that region, you have about 3 quarries that are known right now, and I'm sure there are many more which have not been discovered. So you see evidence there are inscriptions of the stone workers in the place there. You see sketch studies for motifs and all that, which you later find in finished temples in the complex. There are also symbols which have been interpreted as guild symbols. Guilds of artisans had their own symbols which they carved on the quarries that belong to them. And then mainly you have evidence for huge masses of stone being removed and processed, and which ultimately ended up in the monument which formed the World Heritage Site complex right now. So we are going to talk mainly about this evidence of stone working. So this is what you call wedge holes. So stone is usually cut in later times by having a series of wedge holes arranged along the line along which you want them to be cut, and then inserting steel wedges there. People hammer it till the stone breaks along the line of wedges, and after it is broken, you have the wedge marks. What you see here are the wedge marks that you find left over on the broken surface of the stone. So one thing you would notice if you just pay a visit to this quarries is that the wedge holes all seem to be oval or lenticular, lens-shaped in profile. And when it is broken, you have U-shaped wedge marks still left over on the surface of the stone. And then we will contrast this with the late medieval monument center at Hampi, where you have granite. The earlier things what you saw were all sandstone. So you have granite here, and you have evidence of the huge amount of raw material which is there at the site, which got turned into temples like these, which is a Narasimha temple near Chakratirtha. And the one thing we notice here is that again you see the wedge marks here. So you can see huge boulders like this, which is several meters in extent, split by using these wedge marks, and you can see that they look very different from the ones you saw at Pattadakkal. They are rectangular in nature, and when it is broken, the wedge marks are angular. They're not U-shaped, but they're angular in nature. So if you look at the history of how stone has been extracted, it is not always using wedges. So in many early societies, people use fire setting, that is using firewood to placing firewood on top of stones and setting it on fire, and then quenching it with water suddenly so that the stone fractures along that area where it is quenched. So this is a series of by Dr. Verrier Elvin, reproduced here with the permission of his son, Mr. Ashok Elvin. So he worked in Bastar, and he documented people actually, piling firewood on the rock surface, setting it on fire, then quenching it with water, and the broken stone is sort of shaped and put into, made into the memorial stones that is very typical of that region. So in our megalithic sites in southern India too, you find similar things. This is a megalithic site at Kakkunje, where close to Kundapura, and there you find a lot of evidence of quarrying, but you won't find a single wedge mark there. So they have used other techniques rather than wedges to break the stone here. Similarly, there is another megalithic site at a place called Baise near Hosnagara, where also the evidence for there's a quarry in the southern portion of the site where you will not find any wedge marks. So they used other techniques to split the stone here, probably fire setting. And then the very impressive, extensive megalithic site at Hirabenakal, which is north of Hampi, where you have upwards of 200 dolmens like this in a less visited saddle of a hillock there. You find that these stones, you will not find evidence for use of iron wedges to split the stone. In fact, if you look around here, you have the main megalithic, the central group in the megalithic sites there, and south of that there is a little tank from where they had quarried stone, and this water from this tank was probably used to quench the stones after setting it on fire. You have evidence for it. You can see that the entire rock surface, the place is like a museum. The rock surface has been completely broken up by this fire setting, and some of them have been raised on boulders like this, or bigger slabs have been raised on other slabs to create the different types of megalithic monuments at Hirabenakal. And one interesting thing is that there is a large boulder. So this ranging rod here, every division of it is 50 centimeters. So you can see that it's well over 2 meters in height and much more in its width or whatever. And they have split it without using any wedges there. A boulder of a comparable size which is split in Hampi, you can see that wedges have been used very extensively to break that stone. So so coming how it is done in the this is at Karkala, and this is a stones being split, granite stone being split to create this chapadikalu for creating boundary stones or whatever. You insert a lot of iron wedges here along this. These are very small size wedges because the stones are involved are also very small, and they're hammered and turned until the stone splits along the line of. So this is how it is done, and I will just show you a video of how it is done in sandstone near this place, near Pattadakal itself. So I'll just mute the thing here. So what he's doing here is that he has created, you can see already some things have been split there, and he's creating a series of, he has created a series of wedge holes using this kodatte, this little, what do you call it, chisel-like thing that is here. You're removing the debris from that, and then I'll just forward along, because the video is rather long. So he places you can see wedges here, steel wedges which you can see here in this region, and there are also this tiny pieces of sheet metal that are placed like feathers on either side of it. So the reason he says that if you don't place this feather, which he's placing there right now, and he places a wedge and hits it with a big hammer, the gun as they call it, it would just bounce out. So to keep the friction in there, he is using the feathers here, and he's using the small hammer or the kodatte to keep it in, tightly wedge it into the hole here. And then what he does is that he picks up the large hammer. You can see again he's placing some more of those wedges all along the line of wedges, and then you can see the big hammer there, which he is going to use to hammer it in turn. You can see that he hammers the whole thing till the crack develops along there. It's backbreaking work actually, and to imagine that all the stones that you see in which are used in all these Pattadakal temples and all that, were all broken by people like this. Now you can see that this tiny crack is going to develop along the. You can see it here. It started. The crack has started to come, and then he hammers some more, and you can see this crack developing. And that's how the entire stone has been cut in this place here. So you find these wedge holes in several of the finished monuments. So this is the Virupaksha temple, the gateway to the Virupaksha temple. There, you can see that sometimes large pieces of stone have been split, which have pre-existing wedge marks, which they have incorporated because finding such huge blocks of stone were very difficult. And and this is how the previous slide. You can see that the wedge holes are, once again to refresh your memory, they are oval in shape. And after splitting, the stone is the wedge mark is very U-shaped and thing like that, and the surface of that is a little curved when you see it here. And this stone, which is in the quarry at Patadakal, should ideally be in the museum there, because this actually encapsulates the entire process of stone cutting in this one stone itself. So you can see that the line along with the stone had to be split, was marked out here, and then the intervals at which the wedge holes had to be scooped have been put as dots. Then the oval shape has been marked out, and they have scooped out the holes in this. And after cutting, you can see the U-shaped wedge marks along the sides of it also. And interestingly, at Bhojpur in Madhya Pradesh, you can see that the temple of Bhoja, which is there at Bhojpur, there you can see some of the stones which have been, they used exactly similar kind of technique. The line has been marked out so that this piece of thing can be part of the plinth of the temple there. And they use the wedge marks here to cleave off this part of the boulder, which is left unfinished here. And so this is just a comparison of the two things. The line here, the dots along which they mark the interval at which the wedge marks have to be, wedge holes have to be scooped out, and they mark the shape of the wedge holes here, and then they scoop it out. So the entire thing has been shown in this thing here, and the similar kind of process right there in Bhojpur too. So when you look at this, looking at this, where these rough stones might have been used within the temple. So this is the Galaganatha temple at Patadakal, where the finished parts of the temple, if you look at it, you will not find any evidence for wedge marks because they have finished it up, they have polished it and all that, and smoothened it rather. But if you look at the unfinished Chukanasi here, with the stones which are spanning the volume inside that, these are the original stones. And when you go closer to that and look at it, you can see the wedge holes as well as the wedge marks all along here, and you can see that they're U-shaped, they're oval-shaped and all that. So this is the place to look if you're to look for original stones within a temple. And this is at another quarry called Motra Maradi, which is also near Patadakal. There you can see evidence for stuff like, you can see the line here, and they put this wedge holes here, and the interval at which they keep it depends on the size of the block to be removed and all that. And at the top you can see these U-shaped wedge marks where it has been, and you contrast it with Hampi, where the wedge holes are all square or rectangular shape, and the wedge marks are angular. They're very different from the thing here. So this is again at another site of Vijayanagara vintage. It's at a place called Chikkabenakal, which is also northwest of Hampi. And there's a large kere, a tank which has got sluice gates which have been quarried from the nearby granite tors. And here too you can find the typical angular wedge marks which have been obtained after quarrying the stone here. So places like Aihole or Badami, where you have evidence of construction from early medieval period, like in the Chalukyan period, 6th to 8th centuries, as well as there's some fort wall construction and all that, evidence for that in inscriptions during the Vijayanagara period. You find both wedge holes like this in Aihole, and nearby itself you will find the rectangular ones also. So we had decided to look at this and see whether we can make any sense of whether these were actually created later or whatever. So one thing is, this is a U-shaped thing that we were talking about in the for the early Chalukyan type of things. You also find this at Badami, and you also find the angular wedge marks at this place here. And coming back to Motra Maradi at Patadakal, here again you have inscription, you have a guild symbol which is an axe here, and you have sketches by the artisans like this. They have mason's marks. So a lot of evidence of work here during Chalukyan period of Chalukyan rule in the region. You have blocks which have been quarried out and kept ready for transport, and which was abandoned when the site was abandoned. You also have tally marks which have been variously interpreted as attendance marks, or the number of blocks which have been quarried and all that, which you find plenty of these tally marks in the quarries. And you have also studies like these, this is an exact sketch study for an image of Durga which you find inside a niche at the Papanatha temple at Patadakal. And this is where the artisan actually sketched it out and envisaged the sculpture which is ultimately going to be produced in the temple there. So in this place, and this is also one thing at Papanatha temple, on the exterior you have the Vali Sugriva duel, which has also been envisaged at the quarry here, and they've thought about the sculptural program and the quarry itself. And here too, you find all the wedge marks you find here, because there is no evidence of any Vijayanagara, because most of the Vijayanagara intervention happened on the site and mostly extending the fortifications. And here you find only Chalukyan interventions on the side, on the quarry here, and the wedge marks are all oval in shape, like you can see here. They're smooth also, like. So after splitting the stone, what will be remaining is a curved kind of thing on top of the stone and a U-shaped wedge mark below that. So returning back to the stone within spanning the gap in the Shukanasi, unfinished Shukanasi of the Galaganatha temple at Pattadakkal, you can see the U-shaped quarry marks here. And this is again how you would see it. The top of it is half of that oval, so you'll see it curved like this here, which should have been rectangle if it was a Vijayanagara period wedge mark. And then the lower portion of it, you can see it is U-shaped here. And contrasted with the Vijayanagara, the split boulder which I showed you in one of the earlier slides. And yeah, you can see the boulder again which I showed you, that the wedge holes that have been put at close intervals. And after it has been split off, you can see the angular wedge marks here. Some other, just showing you more examples from Hampi. And you can see the angular nature of the thing here. But this is again another scene from Ottaramaradi, where you can see that the boulders have been split off and all that. And at Hampi, where there's an unfinished statue of Veerabhadra here, and the rectangular wedge holes and the angular wedge marks here. So interesting thing is that sometimes always it doesn't happen as a theoretical, the shapes that we've been talking about. There's some marks like these. This is in the South Fort in Badami, the top of the South Fort, above the caves at Badami. One look at it, you cannot really say whether it's from the Vijayanagara period of intervention or whether it is a Chalukyan thing. So we needed to find a method of how we can distinguish between these wedge marks, and is there a kind of a quantitative method or a geometrical method we can use for that. Sometimes like this, it's at Alampur from the Chalukyan site near the Sangameshwara temple. This is a very classical example of the early wedge mark. You don't need to do any analysis here. One look, you can tell it's from the earlier period. But and this also in Hampi, when you look at it, it's very clear it's from the later period. But always things are not like that, like the previous slide which I showed you. So we came up with this method. So the idea is that if we are looking at a wedge mark like this, where it is curved here, and let's say that you fit the whole wedge mark into the closest fitting rectangle, like this. If you put it into the closest fitting rectangle, and then you evaluate the area, estimate the area which is inside the wedge mark here, and look at the area which is outside that but bounded by the rectangle. So in other words, you just do A divided by B plus C. Then you do the same thing for the Vijayanagara period wedge mark. You expect much lesser, B and C to be much lesser. So you expect that if you do A by B plus C here, it should be a kind of lower number, and when you do it here, it should be a larger number. So we tried to do that for several wedge marks here. So Meghana helped me with that thing here, and we looked at this is a Shukanasi stone, part of the Shukanasi stone at Pattadakkal, and this is the other half of it. So some of them are poorly defined, so we took the most well-defined wedge marks and estimated these areas which you can see here. And this is at Pattadakkal, one of the stones like this is one of the paving stones that you found here. So we looked at wedge marks in various contexts at Pattadakkal, and also the ones at Mottaramaradi, and the ones at Alampur, and the ones at Hampi. We decided to contrast it with those things. And the areas, like you can see, we estimated the area, the orange area and the blue areas. And the Chikkabanakal, this was the sluice gate I was talking to you about. This is a very tall, huge piece of granite. It's about 11 meters from the ground and a couple of meters below the ground. So we're talking about 13 to 14 meters. It's a huge engineering feat to quarry a stone, what do you call a pillar of that size. And it's only about 60 centimeters by 60 centimeters in cross section. And when we looked at the quarry, we found that the original thing which was quarried out was about 90 by 90 in cross section. So about 30 centimeters lost in dressing and all that, and making it proper. So here, the quarry marks, again, we looked at it and did the analysis for that. And this is the quarry from which those, the things that you see here, these 14-meter high uprights, were quarried from this huge granite tor which is here, and then carted, somehow it pulled about 150 meters down there and erected in place in that place. And this is the bund which, so how they made the carrier was that this chain of hills which are almost like an amphitheater. So places where there are gaps, they built masonry walls which connects them together. So all the runoff from this region accumulated here, and then you have this huge bund here which is kept across this one, and this one controls the sluice gates, which basically a plug kind of mechanism. When you pull it up, the waters go through the sluice gate into the canals which went to the various fields or whatever. But this is where the quarries are, the stones are quarried, and the intervals at which the wedge marks have been placed have been very close because such a huge piece had to be quarried. And so we looked at the quarry marks on those also and analyzed them. So this is the kind of analysis we got. So in putting it very briefly, we found that all the ones in exclusive early Chalukyan context, we got A by B plus C is equal to 3 or below. So you get something like around just above 3 to all less than 3. Between 2 to 3 we found it. And in the Hampi context, we found that all of them are 6 or above. So there's a clear separation between this. So you have either 3 and below or 6 and above. So we decided to use this thing to look at certain suspicious wedge marks, because this is at the, at Badami near the natural cave here. There is this set of wedge marks which we want to look at whether it was done during the Vijayanagara period or the other one. And then there is this there's a part of the fort wall which you can see here, which leads down to the Agastya Tirtha, and there is this portal which you can see here. There is a zoomed out picture and there's a closer picture. There's a portal here and the fort walls next to it. When you go close to the fort wall, so you can see here that these are the wedge marks on the stone which creates the portal, and on the stones which create the fort wall next to it, you find these rectangular ones and the angular sort of things here. So we did the analysis for the ones near the the caves there, and the ones on the portal, and the ones on the fort wall. And this is this is the south fort, very close to this is where we found it. So it could be the Vijayanagara period or the later periods in which fortifications were built here. And so we did the analysis for the rocks near the south fort also, and this is what we found. So we found that everything is 6 and above. So when you get almost close to 11 here, except the ones on the portal. So what we can conclude is that the portal, or at least the stones that were used in the portal, were quarried during Badami Chalukyan times. And the rest of the wall was constructed during Vijayanagara period. And then we looked for independent evidence, because this is what we have been finding from the wedge marks alone. And then you can see things like this. This is a unique rock cut device, which is very commonly found in Hampi, where to tie horses, they dig this into the thing here. And the fort wall there has this, obviously everyone recognizes the symbol from there, and you can see the rectangular wedge marks next to it. So there's independent evidence from the carvings of the Vijayanagara period for that. Another example is this. One of the fort walls of the near the Agastya Tirtha, you have this symbol of a snake going towards a circle with a deer inside it, which is a symbol of an eclipse actually. So you see the deer within the thing, which represents the moon. And this eclipse symbol is found in Karnataka only during the Vijayanagara period and later. You won't find it before that. Before that, you do find it in Tamil country. But so this is in Hampi, in one of the temples that are ceiling there. And this is at Keladi Nayaka period architecture at Kavaladurga. You find the snake going towards, I don't know whether they can just about make the deer turning its face to the other side. It's much more clearer than that. So this eclipse symbol is a Vijayanagara period thing in Karnataka. So you can find that same thing here at the fort wall, close to where the analysis was done. So it independently confirmed that this was done during the later period. So then we decided to extend it in other direction. This one in Kisaragatta, possibly from the Vishnu Kundan period, and we saw some wedge marks here too on the exposed stones. And then we went to Sirival, we have a set of Rashtrakuta monuments there, unfortunately very badly being rebuilt right now. And there too there are exposed stones which are from the interior here, which have got very clear wedge marks here. So we did perform the same analysis on these. And this again at a place called Anabi near Sirival, and where the temple, the stones which go into the structural part of the temple have been left exposed. And you can see it here. And you can see very clear wedge marks. In fact, you don't really need analysis for these clear wedge marks, but we have performed it all the same. So the Kisaragutta one and the Sirival Anabi stones, and we found that all of them, though it's a period after the Badami Chalukyan period, the Rashtrakuta period, you find that they all conform to the below 3 category for this one. Then we decided to take the whole thing across to the other center of early monumental architecture in Mamallapuram. There's a Ganesha Ratha here, and initially I was fondly hoping that we would find that the Pallavas had rectangular ones and the Chalukyas had, so it would be very easy to identify their signatures in places like maybe Alora and stuff like that. But so initially we found evidence like that. Close to the Ganesha Ratha, you find rectangular wedge holes here. But then when you look, and this also is very angular ones, which thought that they may be having earlier kind of thing. But then closer you look at it, things which are in the original context, I'll tell you how we decided it was in the original context. You find the oval wedge marks, and so this is very close to the Ganesha Ratha. You can see the oval wedge marks on the stones here, and close to that cistern that I showed you in one of the earlier slides. On this part of the cistern, you have this oval wedge marks here. In context like this, the Shore Temple, which is very clearly of Pallavan vintage, you find in the stones of the compound wall, you find the U-shaped wedge marks here. You can see it here too. And these Nandis which are kept on the walls all along here, you can find the wedge marks here also in this piece of stone. Some of them also have been fashioned from blocks of stone which had oval wedge marks on it. And so, and then closer to the Ratha, the 5 Rathas that you find here, there are a lot of unfinished portions here. Here too you find that close to the Nakula Sahadeva Ratha and the elephant that is next to it, you have the oval shaped wedge marks here. So here too there is this is a Raya Gopura built during the Vijayanagara period, and close to the Raya Gopura you have the rectangular wedge holes here. And looking at the Pidariamman Ratha, there's a lot of unfinished stuff, and so this is a closer to another view of the Pidariamman Rathas. And here too, we can see some of the portions which have been left unfinished, where the stone has not been removed totally. You can find the U-shaped wedge marks here, and yeah, here again you can see them. And this is the Valyangutte Ratha, which is again unfinished and a little bit further away from the Pidariamman Rathas. And this also, the lower portion is left unfinished. Here to very close to it, you can find the oval wedge holes, which you can see here. And this one, you can see this portion, that it is the old U-shaped wedge marks here. Interestingly, in this place, there is one place where you find angular things. So I don't know whether it's an evidence that it's either there was some sort of finishing attempted in the Vijayanagara period or not. There's something that we need to look at in more detail, spend more time there and look at more detail. And then this is the old fashioned wedge marks. This is again the Valyangutte Ratha you can see here. And just to completely a different place here in Sindai in Meghalaya, we had looked at, this is just by chance we had gone there and seen one of the bridges built during the period of the rulers from Sylhet here, and we found that next to this bridge here, the bedrock there has been cut using oval wedge marks here. So just to show you a comparison from a different place and time. And then I was wondering, when did this changeover from the oval wedge marks to the rectangular wedge marks happen exactly? So I've not conducted a systematic enough survey to tell you an exact date, but I suspect it is during the period of Kalyani Charukya rule, because this abandoned Jain temple at Arisibidi, ruined rather, in Arisibidi, seems to have angular wedge marks here. I have not analyzed it, but this is a thing that I've seen here, and a couple of other places too which are not shown here. And then let us go across to some other, just to compare what was happening in medieval northern India. So looking at Madhya Pradesh, so so first of all, looking at our early stupa at Sanchi, and so everywhere, if you keep your eyes peeled for it, you can see. So this is the quarry at Nagori, which sandstone was sourced from there to Sanchi Stupa also, and to later monuments too. You find what do you call the early type of oval wedge marks and the U-shaped wedge marks there, and the wedge holes and wedge marks. This is at Udaygiri, the caves of Udaygiri, the Gupta period caves at Udaygiri, and this is at Eran, again the Gupta period temple, where there's a huge sculpture of Varaha Avatar as a boar. And in Khajuraho, I thought would be a good place to test it out, because you have temples. The temple construction starts there in 9th century and goes on till the 14th century. So I thought that probably if you look at the early temple and the later temples, you can see the switch over there. But that doesn't happen there. Actually, if you look at the Chaturbhuj temple, which is one of the later ones, you still find the old-fashioned wedge marks in the Chaturbhuj temple there. And Chausat Yogini temple, which is an early one in 9th century, you find it here. And the Lalgua Mahadev temple, which is again in the earlier temple. I'll show you detailed views of these. First, we'll go to Bhojpur, where we saw the wedge holes earlier. So this is the unfinished temple of Bhoja, the ramp which took the stones all the way up to that, what you see here. And scattered around the landscape it's a very important site, because you see things like sketches for moldings and all that, which have been created on the rock by the artisans. And you can see these stones which have been partly carved and left unfinished. Here too, all the intervention that you find have the oval-shaped wedge holes. In this stone you have already seen in a previous slide, and this is the same thing here, which you can see here. They wanted to cleave off this portion and take this portion and use it in the plinth of the temple there. And then moving to nearby the ruined temple site of Ashapuri. This is the state in which it is found here, a similar period. And there too you can find all the evidence that you can see here is for the U-shaped or oval-shaped wedge holes and wedge marks. And then coming to Sanchi. So when you look at the Sanchi stupa and you go inside and go through the prakara, so here you can see near one of the toranas here, on this upright, the taba here, you find oval-shaped wedge mark which has come from the thing. And then going to this is another stone which is lying nearby there. You can see it. And even in the Ashokan pillar, which has been, somebody tried to break it in a later period, they have used the oval-shaped wedge holes here. So it looks like in northern part of India, I mean, this is with few data points, it's a sweeping generalization to make, but looks like there was not, this switchover was only in southern India. It doesn't seem to have happened in northern India. And this is Nagodi, the quarry which I told you, from where you can see evidence of stone have been quarried. The famous Nagodi ki Ghodi, the unfinished horse sculpture that you see in the quarry there. And here too you can see the wedge holes of the oval type and the wedge marks of the U-shaped thing that you find here. And other places, there's the classical thing, you can see the curve at the top, the half the oval and the U-shape which you can see here. And then Eran, this is a site in which you have a series of temples, many of them dilapidated. This is a huge sculpture of Varahamurti which I was talking to you about, the Vishnu sculpture here, the broken Narasimha lying there. In this site too, all the stone fragments that you could find where wedge marks were, they were all conformed to the old type. Udayagiri, where again the Varaha is a big powerful thing throughout MP when you see at different kind of sites. And here too you can see in the Udayagiri caves there, wherever you can find evidence for stone removal, you find the earlier type of wedge holes, which are wedge holes and wedge marks here. You can again see the oval ones in this thing here. So let's move on to Khajuraho with the grand array of temples that is culminating in the Kandariya Mahadev temple here. And so this is a panoramic view of the site there. And this is the Chaturbhuj temple which I was telling you, it's a late temple there. Here it has been remodeled lately, you can see the Shikara here. And this portion of it where the facing stones and the plinth have fallen away, you can see the original stones and they have the U-shaped thing here. And then there's the Bija Mandal, there's an abandoned temple site of Bija Mandal, which is just a mound there right now. And there too, you can see the stones are all you have the U-shaped thing here. So it looks like here, this is very clear in this particular picture. So it looks like in this place that whatever the reasons for changeover from one type of wedge hole to the other one did not happen, at least in Madhya Pradesh. And this is looking at the early temples here. This is the Chausan Yogini temple, which is a rectangular enclosure around a courtyard-like thing. And here too, the stone fragment which you could find are in the early type. And the Lalgo Mahadev temple, which again is a 9th century temple, it's in the ruined stage. So the ruined stones in the Shikara, you can see at the top that you don't find we really do not know why this changeover happened. Did they change? I mean, there's been people have been thinking that there's another technique that people use to split the stone, that is to insert wooden wedges and then wet them with water till they expanded and split the stone. But whatever evidence they found in Badami, where in the museum you can find the iron wedges of the people, so they use steel wedges. So it looked like they use the same method of hammering it in, and it's the same way. So why exactly this changeover happened, we cannot really have an explanation for that. But I think this is a new strand of information that you get about stoneworkers in different parts of India and how it moves from different, one particular technique moves from one part to the other. One of the exciting things that I found was in Mr. Uday Kumar's work on memorial stones here. So that many of them have edge marks on the surface behind it. So when you have a dated stone, so he had shown me an example where from 8th century there is a memorial stone. The same site you have another memorial stone from the 12th century, and one has an oval wedge mark and the other one has a rectangular wedge mark. So I think he is sitting on a treasure trove of information where I think we have dated structures from different parts of century of medieval Karnataka. And by looking at it, I think we can get a lot more data to supplement whatever beginning we have made in this thing. So I think I'll leave you with these visuals of Lalgo Mahadev temple.